Does God exist? Does God still interact with us today?
Here's the good news. God is alive and showing up in people's lives today in the 21st century. These are the stories of how he reveals himself and is working in the lives of real people through the miracles, the mayhem, and the mundane of life.
Hello and welcome. I am Hollis Moore.
And I am Lori Spiker. We are two friends whose faith journeys have become intertwined as we felt called to share God with the world in a unique and different way. So here's our podcast.
By sharing people's stories, we transform how we relate to each other and how we relate to God. Be prepared to experience the unconditional love of God in new and unexpected ways. And be prepared to proclaim, "Oh my God is awesome." Welcome to the Oh My God Pod.
Okay, so Bethany, let's move into your family had an intervention with you.
Yep.
What happened?
So I finally surrendered to this intervention that they had been trying to do for a few weeks at that point. So my CPS case had begun. And so I wasn't even allowed to see my daughter at that point. And they had kind of told my ex-husband, like, you cannot drop her off for her visits, you know? And so it was kind of a thing where, like, for his sake also, like, if he didn't abide by their requests or what they were telling him, he could end up being at risk also with losing her. So he abided by that, which I have no hard feelings with. I mean, at the time it was really hard for me, but you know, I was not in the mentality to even be a healthy person for her. So I don't hold anything like that against him. So I went a couple weeks without seeing her. And so I was really at like my end point. I did not have a job. I was selling anything and everything that I owned because I needed money to feed this addiction. And I was like hitting dead ends with everything, financially, with my addiction, with trying to get clean, with trying to get my daughter back. Nothing was going to work at that point. And thank God, because I would not have followed this intervention any other way. I was just kind of at my end. So on February 15th of 2017, I abided by my family's requests and said that I would get clean. And not knowing anything or anywhere to go, they took me to a hospital to start my detox, because I was at that point where I wouldn't have been able to physically detox safely. Like it could have been a risk, like a death risk for some people if your addiction is to a certain point. Even like alcoholism, if people are alcoholics extreme, they could die trying to detox on their own. So, and they didn't know anything about detox or withdrawal, so they took me to an emergency room, and I had to be discharged within 24 hours because there were no beds there, and they don't detox. They're not a detox center. So I was back at my parents' house, about to start withdrawing, and so they're like calling every place around. We got to get her into a center. She needs to start detoxing. Like she's about to start withdrawing. Like every place was saying that they had no beds available. We have no beds available until next week. Every place nearby. And they finally found a place in Grand Rapids, about 3 hours away from our house. And that could take me that evening. And so my mom and one of my sisters and her husband drove me up to Grand Rapids to detox. So I stayed at the detox facility for a week. My detox was a week. And upon being discharged, the next question was, where do I go? So the place that I was living before was with my ex, and that was not a healthy option at the time. But my parents' house was also not an option because they were at their end with trying to figure out how to manage my challenges. I guess you could say I have been so manipulative in the past and unstable and all over the place at that point.
And at this point,
I mean, they've been on this roller coaster with you for like 10 years, right? Aren't we like at 10 years of this with you, of this, right?
I was 30,
Okay.
so more than 10 years.
Okay, right.
Because I was 30. I had just turned 30 when like my overdoses were happening.
Sure.
Because my birthday is January 6th, and it was in that month that the overdoses were happening.
Okay.
And so, and my mental health struggles had started when I was like 14.
Right.
So more than half of my life have been just this roller coaster of me trying to figure things out, and then me pushing the help away, and me trying to figure things out, and then pushing the help away. And so, yeah, so for my parents, I mean, it was, you know, I don't know if I could say self-preservation, you know, like it was no hard feelings there at all. It was for their own boundaries in a sense. Like, we cannot have this in our house. Like, this is just too much. We cannot do this. So moving back in with my parents was not an option. And so my dad suggested, why don't you go to Life Challenge? And so Life Challenge is a sister ministry to Teen Challenge, which is a national, all over the world, actually, ministry for adults in recovery from addictive challenges. So even people with like porn addictions or anger addictions or like all sorts of addictions. It's a year-long program, and it's very, very strict and biblical based. It's a Christian discipleship program to help you get your life back on track. And we had known about this program. My dad was actually friends with the director for years because they would come and minister to churches in the area. That's part of their ministry was going, and that's part of how they're funded because they're not government funded. So they used to come to our churches like when I was growing up. So my dad had known him since I was a kid because they were coming to our churches. And I just know from my dad's testimony, like saying, I remember watching them on stage and thinking, oh my gosh, that's so hard, and never imagining that that was going to end up being my daughter one day, you know? And so he was like talking to me, you know, like we're driving back from Grand Rapids after my week of detox. And he's like, yeah, you should go here. And I'm like, still like, I want nothing to do with God. I'm not going to chapel every day. I'm not going to read my Bible every day. I am not doing this. Like, no, no, no. And it's strict. I finally agreed to take a phone call on the drive home. And they were like, yeah, you wake up at 5:30 in the morning and you have breakfast and you have to do morning exercises. And then we go to chapel every day. And then there's a full day of, you know, Christian discipleship classes. And, you know, on Sundays we go and minister in churches in the area, and and you can't smoke cigarettes and you can't do this. And like every single thing out of her mouth, I was, nope, right. Nope, you know, like, nope, lost me there. And I was like, well, I'm going to find a halfway house. I'll just go live at a halfway house. And so the 3-hour drive back from Grand Rapids, my dad was the one that picked me up, was probably one of the hardest conversations and drives that we've ever had to have together. But it was a monumental day. I was calling like halfway houses. So what are the requirements for this? I am not going to this discipleship program. Like, that is not happening. And so finally my dad convinced me to at least go check it out. Let's at least go check it out, because they were not going to take me back to their house for a night. They knew
you had to go somewhere, right?
Downhill, and they were taking me somewhere.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm dropping you off at a halfway house. I don't know where I'm dropping you off, but it's not going to be our house. And so we went there, and I was kind of like, I have no idea how I'm going to pay for a halfway house. I don't even know what I'm going to do. And I just remember my dad saying, just trust the people that love you. Just trust what we're asking you to do, because we want your best. We have your best interest at heart. Just trust us. Even if you can't see why, just trust the people that love you. And we all think that this is what you need to do. And my stubborn self was like, but I was at my dead end. Well, I don't have any alternative really. So I'm like, this is a Wednesday. And I said, I'll stay until the weekend, thinking like, well, that'll give me a few days to figure out my next step. Okay, by the weekend, I'll have another halfway house set up or something. Like, I'll figure this out.
Okay.
My dad goes, please, at least give it a week. At least give it a week. And that week goes by, and I remember thinking, all right, let's see if I can do this for a month. And within that month was the month of transformation. I ended up rededicating my life back to God in the beginning of March. So within like 3 weeks of being in the program, it's basically just like, and we'll joke about it, it's a brainwashing program. You go there
In a good way, right?
Yeah,
like in the best
totally
way.
in the best. Because like, there's no way that I would have gone back to God any other way, probably. But it was that every morning praying, reading your Bible every day, going to biblical-based classes every day, going to chapel every day. You can't fight God with all of that. It's going to happen. It was either I'm going to leave or it's going to soak in and I'm going to eat it up. And that's what I did. And that was the best decision of my life. God used that program to totally transform my mental state, my emotional state. And that was when I rededicated my life back to God. And that was where I really learned what a personal relationship with God means and actually going to God. So that program is very, very strict in the sense that you can't have your phone. You can get one phone call a week. So once a week I could call my family. That's it. And then I got an extra phone call for my daughter. And eventually I was able to have my daughter stay on the weekends. So she actually stayed in the women's dorms with me. She came every Friday and left every Sunday.
Aww.
And in that time period, I was able to close my CPS charge in my case because I was in a program that I was sitting through, and the women's director and I were on a call, and she spoke on my behalf and said that I was there and I was making good choices and I was following the requirements. So they ended up closing that case. And so my daughter was able to start staying with me on the weekends. And so that relationship was able to begin, forming again. And
because how old was she at this time?
She's like 3.
Okay.
She was young.
Okay.
She was 3. And so her cute little self, she was like the girls' mascot.
I bet.
There were like, it varied, how many girls there were at a time, but there were probably between 8 and 18 girls at a time. And she would stay every weekend. And I mean, we all just adored her. She was like the cutest thing ever. And she would come and do all the things. And
yeah.
So that was a huge blessing.
And you probably looked forward to it every week. And then you guys all had something to be excited about.
Yeah, I lived my weeks for the weekend.
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
I don't know if I would have been able to, how I would have been able to do that program without her, because I basically just like Monday through Thursday, like just lived for that Friday when she would get dropped off. But because of how isolated you are, you can get one phone call a week. It's timed and it's supervised. They listen in on all of your conversations, and you only have a certain approved phone call list. Even like, it was very, very strict and regulated, but I needed that.
Yes.
I needed that. I was a liar. I was manipulative, and I could get away with it. I could manipulate anybody close to me. So I needed that in my life to get me to figure it out. But because of that, so we had a prayer closet, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The War Room.
Of course,
We had a prayer closet and we have stuff taped on the wall and stuff. But through that, I learned what a relationship with Christ was, because up until that point, I'd always turned to friends or to boyfriends or to a therapist to talk about my problems and vent and get my approval or get me to feel better. And at this point, I couldn't even call my family if I was struggling with something when I was in there. You can't call your family whenever you want. You have one half an hour each week that's on a schedule, like it's not whenever you want.
Yeah.
So I learned how to cope with struggles and how to go to God when I was struggling, because I had nowhere else to go. And that's what I needed. And that was when I truly became aware of what it means to have a personal relationship with God. And that was where like the deep transformation and healing really began. Was I was able to get gut raw honest in my journaling or in my prayers, and in that prayer closet, in the shower, when nobody else was around, just crying and screaming out to God, help me, like how you were asking earlier. I was finally at that point to where I was like, I am so alone. I am so desperate. Just like, save me, walk me through this, help me. I have to do this for a year. Help me. This is the hardest thing I've ever envisioned. I was rebellious my whole life. I was from a very strict, Christian, very conservative household. I was 17 years old and not allowed to watch PG-13 movies. My parents were very strict growing up.
Gotcha.
And so rebellion was very, very deep ingrained in my personality. And so that was a huge challenge for me, was to surrender to this program and these rules, and some that I didn't even agree with, or I didn't even think were necessary, or I thought was overkill. But it was in that process that I was able to learn what it means to surrender and to just do what you're told to do, because you might not know what's best.
Yeah.
And take it. And then when you leave some of it behind, like whatever, but you learn, and so we learned about the Bible. I read the whole Bible in a year. I learned, like, we took some really intense college criteria type courses, different books of the Bible, biblical living, on biblical standards, on a wide range of things. And it was incredible. The stuff that I learned in there was like beyond amazing. And I am forever grateful for everything that I was able to gain from that program.
Wow. So, okay, you made it a year. So what?
So I actually did not.
Oh, okay.
To be completely honest, it was a full, it's a year program.
Okay.
I left after 10 months because I had the responsibilities of my daughter and her staying there every weekend. There were some challenges in that aspect of being a mom, but also meeting the criteria that the program needed me to meet because of how much responsibilities there were. So for a few weeks, I had been in prayer with my mentor in the program and my parents and my sisters. They came and visited me almost weekly.
Okay.
And so this was not a manic, last minute, I can't handle this decision. It was a well thought out and prayed over decision that I had the support of people that I knew had my, people that I had been listening to that had told me to go, so they did support that decision. So it was like for the first time I was doing something with their support, and they allowed me to move back home my parents allowed me to move back home. Yep. I lived with my parents and my daughter, her dad.
And this was this is 4 years ago, right?
Yeah. So, I just came on 4 years clean.
Yes.
So about 3 years ago was when I left. And
when you left,
what's ironic is the day that I left was December 23rd. And if you remember earlier in my story, December 23rd, a few years before then, was the day I was driving 3 hours north
to jail,
to go spend a month in jail. So it's very ironic now looking back. So December 23rd is a big day for me. I always kind of reflect back on those two extremes in my life. But it was like a beautiful, beautiful situation. I had Christmas at home with my family and my daughter. Her dad and I share custody. We share physical and legal custody. So I still, we share time equally. But when I was at my parents', she lived there. We each had a bedroom there, and I was able to be a mom again, start learning how to be independent. And so I immediately got a job at the preschool at my home church, which is Brightmoor. And my boss was actually a longtime family friend. So I had called her when I left and I said, hey, is there any way that I can work there? We talked about this scenario, and she was like, absolutely. I am so glad you're doing good. I would love to hire you. So I was very blessed to have that opportunity and get a job so quickly and in a positive scenario, obviously.
A healthy job for you.
Right.
Yes.
I knew restaurants was like definitely a no-no. So
right.
my options were very limited. And so that was like perfect. And at the same time, I was learning child development stuff and stuff that I had missed in part of Ava's life. Because I spent part of Ava's, years and not experiencing that and not learning how to bond with her like that. So there were some even child development stuff that I was able to learn through that helped equip me to regain how to be a mom.
Yeah.
So it was really a blessing in a number of ways. And I was, in a Christian environment. It was at the church that I am still a member of.
Okay.
And with a boss that prayed over me and was like a mentor to me. So it was the perfect scenario for what I could have had at that time. And I owe a lot to that opportunity as well.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Did you know that the Oh My God Pod is non-revenue generating? That means we make no money from the podcast, but it does cost us money to produce the show because we have tools and technology that we've invested in and we subscribe to monthly so we can deliver these awesome stories to you. Well, we now have a Venmo account that makes it easy for you to support us. Simply go to the Venmo app on your phone and search for the @ symbol, Oh My God Pod. And when asked, enter the 4 digits 6006 when it asks you for the last 4 digits of the phone number. Please consider supporting the podcast with a donation to offset our production costs. It can be a one-time donation of $20 in honor of our inaugural year in 2020, or a $5 a month reoccurring donation. Or if you're interested in sponsoring an entire show, please contact us. When you partner with us and the production costs, you can be confident that you are contributing to spreading God's love through our guests' stories. We may not all have the courage to come on the air, but each of us can do our part to further God's kingdom in this new and unique way. Thank you in advance for supporting the Oh My God Pod.
Let's fast forward a little bit because you are remarried.
I am.
Do you want to tell us about that and kind of where are you now?
Yeah. So 3 years after I left, now it's 3 years after I've left. So in these 3 years, I began dating my now husband, who I am so madly in love with, and so grateful for second chances and God's grace and mercy to give me an amazing husband. So we dated for a year and a half, I want to say. And as soon as I left, I knew I wanted to get involved in ministry. Ministry was the reason that I was alive. Ministry, it was the EMS workers, but if it wasn't for that program, I wouldn't have stayed clean, So it was ministry and the people that poured their life into me, into serving me, into serving God, into serving me for God, being God's hands and feet is why I'm here today, So I knew that was there's a reason why I'm alive. There's a reason why God's kept me. So it must be to help other people. And so I immediately got involved in ministry, and I began volunteering with a teen foster care camp ministry at our church and fell in love with it. I fell in love with the ministry. I fell in love with the ability to pour into these teenagers' lives for a number of reasons. One, because I had had CPS case at one point and faced the possibility that this could have been my child in foster care at some point, and I can understand or relate to some of the dark places that these teens have been in. But also at the same time, knowing that if we don't help them, they could end up in the same cycle as me and end up as an addict. So I had so many different reasons behind my passion for that. But so I did that for 1 year. And then the following year, my now husband did it with me, and he fell in love with the ministry. We ended up getting engaged one of the weekends at one of the camps. He kind of swept me off to the side and proposed to me on the dock at the camp. And because we were just so passionate for the ministry, so it was a really special place for us. And so we ended up getting married in October of 2019. And so we're newlyweds.
You are a newlywed. Yes.
So we're newlyweds.
Okay.
But I am now blessed to have 2 bonus kids. I don't know if you can call one of them a kid because she's 19, but I get to be a stepmom also. Okay. And it's just been a big blessing. It's been a blessing to watch him be a stepdad to my daughter. And I have a healthy co-parenting relationship with my ex-husband. So I can really have a lot of appreciation for that as well. So I worked at the preschool for a few years, and we actually joined leadership with that ministry last year. So right before COVID shut everything down, and we ended up having to transform this ministry into a way to minister to them from a distance. So we did box and website form camp and delivered this stuff. But it was still really special to be able to do that and do it with Ava. She helped, put some of the things together. And ministry has always been really, really huge for me. While I feel like I am here for a reason, and it's to help other people, but I also recognize my family as my first ministry. I'm here to be a good wife and to be a good mom. And so kind of trying to, now it's learning how to manage sober life. I've kind of gotten stronger in my sobriety walk and my walk as a normal to society, but taking it further now and helping other people, but finding that fine balance. So during COVID, I began an online Bible study with women from all over the country. And I've been running a wellness business. So it's been a big pursuit of finding ways to eliminate any yucky from my life and anything that's going to cause long-term harm. So my wellness journey is really big on eliminating products and things that are going to have long-term negative effects on my health because I've done so much damage. So it's really not just do I want to be clean from drugs, but I want to support my health in all the ways possible. So for about 2 years, I've been pursuing this and started up my own little business doing that. But I also nanny now, and I work at the church now as the early childhood events coordinator. So I kind of juggle a lot of things. So now it's been learning how to be a responsible adult, but also maintaining the responsibilities that mean the most to me, which is my home and my family. So kind of learning, I'm now in the process the last 6 months of learning how to set boundaries and not just aspire for all of the things and doing all of the things because, oh yeah, if God wants me to do it, I'll do it. Yes, 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 I'll do it all because I want to do it all and I want to do everything. And learning how to not be as much a people pleaser, but limit and prioritize where I am
focusing your time,
attributing my time and energy to. because as a recovering addict, I have to keep in mind that if I am not taking care of myself, and if I stretch myself too thin, I put myself and my recovery at risk. And at any moment, one bad choice is going to put me right back there, and my addiction will start, and I will lose everything in a moment.
Well, and
I know that.
That's what I was going to ask is, so what does it look like for you 3 years out of your program? Do you do therapy now? Are you in like support groups? How do you manage this now?
So I'm really involved with the people that I'm close to.
Okay.
I've done therapy periodically, but
Okay.
not something that I've been consistent with. I don't do therapy, but I found, I mean, recovery is different for everybody. So nothing against meetings, nothing against support groups, nothing against therapy. Everyone's addiction is different and everyone's recovery is different. For me, especially in the discipleship program of 10 months of just learning how to have a relationship with God and relying solely on Him, I've really just gotten so ingrained in my walk with God. And I've found a lot of therapy in serving others. For me, that's very therapeutic also, which is kind of where I struggle to set boundaries, because that also feeds into my people pleasing, and that feeds into, oh, it makes me feel good to do this and to do this. And I have to step back and remember, where is this what you need, or do you need to be focusing on yourself right now and your family? So I'm so close to my family now. So I'm very open with, like my sisters and my mom and my husband. So being really open and transparent about things. If I'm feeling under attack or I'm really struggling with something, I jump on our family messenger chat and I say, today's a bad day. Who is available? I need somebody. And somebody will come over, like they know, if I reach out, I need support right now. But I've learned through the program not to reach out for everything, because that became a crutch for me at the same time. So I've learned also, maybe I just need to slow down and read my Bible. Maybe I need to journal, so I've really, really just relished in my morning time with God, my devotions and journaling with God. That's really been therapeutic for me. Worship music is like therapy for me. I could turn it on and just blast it and get tears pouring and just like have my own therapy. So I feel like my personal relationship with God is really what keeps me going, but also having realistic physical worldly relationships with family members, or there's a handful of people at the church that I can open up to if I'm struggling with something. I'm very open about my testimony and my story, but I'm very private about intimate present struggles, if that makes sense, because like I've learned in the past that sometimes what we're struggling with isn't meant for all ears, but there are certain people that can be really supportive when you are struggling. So I have a handful of people that I consider my mentors. One is a pastor's wife, and I will call and say, hey, can we meet up for, especially pre-COVID times, hey, can we meet up for lunch this week? Like, I really need somebody to talk to. And in that sense, I have therapy, but I don't go to therapy.
I was just curious. And I mean, as a, an outsider looking in, the one thing that strikes me is that in all your other attempts at recovery, you didn't have the God piece. And so we know God is a healer, and we know that God is a redeemer.
Amen.
And so that might be all you need, right? And your family. I'm telling you, like, your family just seems amazing. They really, 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 I want to do an interview with your family at a different time too, because I'm sure from their perspective, God has been walking with them and just their support of you. I'm so happy for you.
I am very blessed with my family, because they have had many reasons to give up on me, and they didn't. And because of that persistence, I am alive today. and our relationship is like amazing now. My relationship with all of them is it's wonderful. It's irreplaceable now. Like,
but I also think, wouldn't you say though, it's their persistence and, commitment to you, but they wouldn't have been able to do that if they weren't walking with God also, right? I feel like that type of strength in a person to go, 10, 14 years, whatever it is. I mean, you can only do that with God. I just don't think you could do that without him.
Yeah. Yeah. And my dad's even shared, in his testimony, like, but God, like I had to go to church and just surrender. He had to surrender me to God. I can't do anything about this.
Right.
You have to save my daughter, save my daughter,
Yes.
And
I bet.
so yeah, I mean, it's only God that I am here today,
Yes.
But he worked through a lot of people and a really amazing ministry in the hands and feet of people, God's servants, that dedicated their lives and volunteered in that ministry or have been there for me since I've been out, and the time to pour into my life and pour into my journey. And all of those little puzzle pieces played together to get me to where I am today. I owe so much to all of them, but I feel like that's my way to pour back and to give back, is to be able to bless and help others.
Bethany, what do you want to say if anybody is listening and they're struggling with any type of addiction? If anyone's listening that can relate to your story, what do you want to say to them?
I feel like it's no matter how hard or how much you may want it, I don't feel like you can have the drive and the determination to maintain it, if you can even get it, but to maintain it without God as your source of strength. And I'm going through a devotional called 100 Days of Joy and Strength by Candace Cameron Bure. And it's based off of the Bible verse in Nehemiah, where it's talking about God as our source of joy and strength. No matter how bad I wanted to stay clean, there was always that deep down struggle for happiness and emptiness that I could never fill, no matter how hard. I had maintained to be a wife, I had had a daughter, and that's what I dreamed and aspired for my whole life. But still, there was always that empty hole that I didn't know was there, and that was always available for Satan to fill with something that he needed to fill it with, some distraction. And so until I found what a true, personal relationship with God was, and turning to God and just surrendering completely and wholly to him, was I able to fill that hole so it's not empty and it's not available for that distraction anymore. You could put something in front of me right now and I wouldn't take it, because I don't have that emptiness inside anymore that I feel like I want to fill. I feel whole. I feel like, as long as I maintain my self-care, my responsibilities to myself and my family, and in my devotions, or what I need to do, and I'm intentional. I'm very intentional about a lot of things now, because I know if I'm not intentional, then I'm leaving myself vulnerable in an area, and that's where the distractions can come into play. So for me, it was filling that empty hole that I didn't even know was there, but I had to fill it with that personal relationship with God, so I didn't have room for distractions to find their way in and take over. And I wouldn't realize it until they had already taken over,
Right. Yeah. Okay. No, thank you for that. Mm-hmm. And then I think my final question is, who is God to you?
God is, I could say he's my best friend. God is my savior. He's my warrior. God is what gives me my strength. When I feel like I have no strength, I just turn and I know, like, I have a tattoo on my arm that says "Be still," and it's Exodus 14:14, and it comes, the verses, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." And that really got me through the program when I was struggling with a lot of anxious thoughts. And because the place in the Bible story that it plays into is with, they're just traveling around the desert. And I felt like I was traveling around my desert, like my desert of just trying to figure out and get my life on track. And like, God, why am I still in this desert, you know? And I just want to get out. I just want to get out of this desert. And that's where that Bible verse comes in, is the Lord will fight for you. You just need to be still. And so truly understanding that I don't have to fight all of my battles. Every challenge, every obstacle that I come into play isn't for me to figure out. And that's me. Like, I am a control freak, plan A or type A, like planner, has to have everything figured out personality. And so that was like the most freeing thing for me, was to learn that I don't have to figure everything out. I don't have to, as much as I want to sometimes, and I try to sometimes and fail, I don't have to have it all figured out. I don't have to fight all of these battles. Something hard comes along. Like, I went through a time period where, you know, like when I got out of the program, I found out that I had a warrant because I had missed a court date that I didn't know about. And I had to go through a court case and everything. And there's, you know, like I've had so many obstacles in these last 3 years that like came up, sicknesses, like random things that I've had to fight through. But that, like, I just kept falling back on that Bible verse that it's not for you to fight. Like, you're not alone in this fight. God will fight for you. You just have to surrender. You don't have to figure it out. You don't have to find the end or make a plan. Just take, and my dad always used to tell me, just take the next right step. Just make your next right choice. And there's some days that I feel like I've failed everything, but I can go to bed knowing that it's been a successful day because I didn't use, you know. So for me, it's that little thing that, like, even if I feel like I screwed up everything in the day, or I didn't figure out how to fix this certain problem that I'm going through, I didn't use. And that's the bottom line. It was a successful day. I went to bed and I have another day clean. And I'll just try again tomorrow. And God's going to work everything else out. And he has. In the last 4 years, it hasn't been easy. I've not had a car. I've gone through this. I've gone through that. Like, I can name off a number of challenges that I've had to go through. And some of them were deserved. Some of them, you know, like, you can get clean, but you don't get freed from all the consequences of your choices. I have some physical challenges that I have to deal with still because of my addiction. I have, you know, I had legal trouble, like financial trouble. I have payments that I have to make up for stuff that I've done. But God's been lining things up, you know, like from the moment I left the ministry with that preschool job that ended up being a blessing in disguise because it equipped me how to be a better mom, you know, and learning child development stuff, and, you know, putting people in my life, and the foster care ministry, and now the events coordinator. Like, things have happened the way that they were supposed to. And they wouldn't if I would have been sitting there trying to figure it all out. But it's taken a lot of, okay, I've seen God working miracles. Okay, I've seen God making things happen that I didn't even think or foresee was a possibility, and it happened. So he's not going to stop now, you know. So just recognizing now that, you know, all I need is God. I just have to go to him, and I just have to surrender, and he's going to figure the rest out. He's already got it figured out. We are not powerful enough to screw up God's plan. I don't have the power to screw up God's plan. I tried to kill myself. Like, God was like, that's not in your plan. That's not the plan, you know. Like, we cannot make, there's no mistake that we can make that's going to screw up what God's plan is. That's just part of God's plan. We just have to, I shouldn't say we just have to figure it out, but we just have to keep making the next right choice, and his plan is going to work out, you know. And it's all part of the story. It's all part of the journey, you know. And for me, it's using this story, and this is my purpose now, is using this to help other people, because I feel like I don't live life with regrets. I will never say like I regret that or I regret that, because I feel like if I regret it, then I'm wishing it didn't happen, and I'm wasting the opportunity to either learn from it and to grow from it and to help others through it, So now I have the opportunity to use these awful experiences or challenging experiences to help and witness. And I wouldn't have the personality, I wouldn't have the strength or the confidence or the ability to have the convictions that I do if it weren't for those challenges. So now I can appreciate them, but I definitely didn't appreciate them at the time.
I know. Oh, Bethany, man. Well, it's pretty evident that you are supposed to be alive and that God, has a really, really, really big purpose for you. I am so grateful that you said yes to this. Just thank you really for being so vulnerable and being so honest, and for helping us to understand in the mind and the life of an addict, and really truly how hard that is. And I guess, just to be able to go through recovery multiple times. And this is just the best story of redemption, that it just wasn't working for you without God. I mean, and I think that's just, we're going to land it with that. We pray for all of our guests on air. So what can I be praying for you, and what can our listeners be praying for you for right now?
Just continued, I hate to use the word success, but just for my continued recovery and guidance and wisdom on my future endeavors, our future endeavors, I should say, because I'm married. And so we do all of our decisions as a couple, but we have some decisions and stuff that comes up when it comes to co-parenting and how to do certain things and the ministries that we're involved with, but also putting our family as priority, as our primary mission field, but also remembering that our recovery has to come first, because it's like when you get on an airplane, they say, put on your mask before you put on somebody else's. If I'm not taking care of myself, then everything else is going to fall apart, So I think that's a whole lot to that answer, that question. But basically,
I'll do my best. Okay. All right.
Just for guidance and wisdom in our recovery, and our journey. I guess.
All right. You got it. Let's pray. And listeners, please join in too. Father God, thank you so much for this time that we got to spend with Bethany. Lord, thank you that you have redeemed her and that you have restored her, Lord, and that you were walking with her even when she didn't know you were all those years. God, we are so grateful that she is alive today, God. We're so grateful that she said yes to your whispers. We're so grateful, Lord, that you just kept tempting her to keep continuing to stay in that program, God, and that she just opened her life to you, Lord. And we're so grateful, God, for what you're continuing to do in her and through her, Lord. And we know that you will continue to do that, God. Please protect her from the enemy. Protect her, God, from any of the arrows that Satan might be trying, to throw her way, God, to get her off course, to distract her, Lord, to tempt her maybe back into unhealthy habits or thoughts, Lord. We know that you are bigger than all of that. And we know that the physical army that she now has surrounding her, Lord, will help her and is bigger than that. God, we just pray for blessings on her new marriage, God, and her blended family, Lord, and that you would give her and her husband wisdom and discernment, Lord, in the choices that they make for their family and the choices that they're making for their role in the ministry as they move forward. And God, we just know and are so grateful for how you are going to use Bethany's story, how you're going to use this episode, Lord. I'm specifically praying that the right eyes will be watching this and that the right ears would hear her story and that people would encourage others to listen to this, Lord, because we know that there are souls out there that do need to hear what Bethany has to say, God, so that they can be redeemed and restored also. We pray all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, man, you are welcome. Again, it was nice to meet you over Zoom. Thank you so much, Bethany, for spending the time with us. Listeners, thank you for listening or watching. If you would please, rate and subscribe to the podcast, hit the subscribe button below if you're watching on YouTube, and we will see you, or we'll hear from you guys again on the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, this is Lori. After the recording of Bethany's interview, she did contact me because she did forget to make a statement about a topic that she feels is very important. So she asked that we could cover it at the end of her episode. And so here it is. I'm going to read this straight from Bethany's words. And she says, "Unlike what I was told as a teen, I feel it is important to add that taking medications for your mental health does not make you a bad Christian. God provides for our needs in various ways, and sometimes using medical treatment is necessary. Just as someone with diabetes needs to monitor their medications, so does someone with a mental health diagnosis. I currently take medications for my mental health as maintenance and plan to continue doing most likely for the remainder of my life. I follow the guidance of my doctor and take only as prescribed, and am grateful for the support they give me and confident in my faith and my beliefs that this is God's provision for my diagnosis." That was straight from Bethany, everyone. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for listening to the Oh My God Pod with Hollis Moore and Lori Spiker. We want you to know that God desires a relationship with you, just like a trusted friend.
Our desire for you is to find hope, inspiration, and connection through today's story. And we hope that you will experience God in your own unique way too. Stay connected and share your stories by joining our Facebook group, visiting our website, ohmygodpod.com, and of course, subscribing to the podcast. And remember, oh my God is awesome.